It's all she right. So she went to school there as a real estate agent. That's kind of one of the youth from dad. He tells me. Let me know when you're ready, Gabby.
We're good.
We're good? Okay, I have 10:10, want to call the meeting to order. If there's anybody watching online, if you will use raise your hand button on Zoom so that we can see you on Zoom and state your name and address for the record, we appreciate it very much.
Somebody raise their hand.
Got somebody raising their hand already?
See if it works.
This is Sean Pitt from Castellian Corporation.
Yeah, I guess you just wanted to be on, right?
I didn't hear.
Okay, item number 2, motion approving the minutes of September 9th, 2024 meeting of the Midland Development Corporation. Do we have any public comment? Any discussion from the board? Okay, do we have a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion for approval.
We have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we have a presentation from Motran Alliance Inc., and James Beecham, and the infrastructure projects and initiatives in Midland and the Permian Basin. James, good to see you this morning. Thank you.
Chairman Stan, great to see y'all too. Thanks for having us here. And we're gonna be a little bit brief for you this morning. So you can move on to your other business, but we did have a couple things we wanted to talk to you about. We'll go to our first slide there. Really a big part of our emphasis this year has been focusing on some interstate development in our area. Of course, you've seen this map before. Essentially what we're highlighting is the additions of I-27 and I-14, along with this connector to I-10 and the existing I-20 connect about 85% of our state's population, 90% of our workforce, and 95% of our GDP. Midland, Texas, these are the interstate grade connections. And so we all know the amazing things that happen out here, but ensuring that we have that transport that ensues and allow those connections to be fully integrated and fully taken advantage of is a big part of this. And our next slide, we'll just move on to I-14 and I-27 components of this. We completed this year both the I-14 and I-27 implementation plans through TxDOT. We hosted those events here, going through both of those. And essentially what this moves forward at this point is something else that we had received approval for. And that's to go ahead and start planning, particularly along the 349, 158 and US 385 corridors, an interstate grade connection. Now you'll see there kind of what an interstate looks like. You've got your freeway in the middle with your access roads. What we're going to be doing initially on that 349, 158 portions is a planning process in the environmental, essentially your PS&E, to go ahead or 4-lane divided and acquire the necessary right of way for access roads later. So the access roads will come a little bit later, but as you well know here, as we've seen when we helped develop the South Route, the Paddock Relievable Route, the Yukon extension, if you don't acquire the right of way now, you're not going to acquire it 5 and 10 years from now. So that secures that footprint. And the good thing is right now, TxDOT actually has a lot of right of way. So that's very, very helpful. I'll also say one of the good things for this is particularly for the city of Midland and Midland County. You know, normally when we have this type of project, there's a portion of it that's matching. But State Highway 158 is part of the phase 1 trunk system. That cost was borne by the state, and actually on the 349 reliever route, all the right of way currently exists. The portion of 349 going further north is all in Martin County. So there's not this will be a little bit of a cost savings there, so hopefully that's a good thing for y'all. that process will be moving forward just as soon as the MPO approves their updated MPP, which includes those projects in there. I know, I guess they're probably it's about 40 days out from that at this point, so. We've got a couple of corrections. I don't think they have 158 listed in there. They've got it listed as 349 in the planning document. So we have to go back and make some technical changes, but all that's in there. So that allows that process to go forward. Once that happens, that allows us, as the department, to go ahead and start getting right away and moving forward all those projects. And that'll be important. We'll talk about that in just a minute. The next project on the next slide is talking a little bit about I-20. This was a significant year. Most people think about the completion of the Midkiff and Cotton Flat overpasses for some very practical reasons for people trying to get south of the interstate there. But another thing that happened just right at the end of the previous year was the overpass at 1250. And I want to call that out just a moment to you because that was a discussion that we had with MDC and TxDOT going back to about 2010. Again, these are long-ended projects, but the significance of that project came because you had a lot of development out there, and those folks were having to go to 1788, turn around on the two-way frontage road to come back to their place of work. So that eliminates about 35% of the traffic out of that 1788 intersection. Now, given the traffic at the 1788 intersection, I don't know if that really makes a huge difference or not. But it was a significant thing for that development, and it was also an important step in this overall interstate project to get those frontage roads converted and get that expansion. So, yeah, and of course, in addition to that, y'all also helped leverage the Midkiff overpass. So what we'll see out there on the interstate is going to be a far better product, and it's important because as we look going forward, I'd like to tell you that I-14 and I-27 are the single most important thing in Midland and Odessa. They do have a lot of significance, but the single most important roadway, both now and going forward, particularly in the future, is I-20 because of that Dallas-Fort Worth area growth that you're seeing, particularly those outlying areas. But again, your history in this is long, and some of it's just now being realized, but is greatly appreciated, those investments that you made. So I just wanted to point that out for you. Going forward this year, the UTP revision, which is our normal opportunity to achieve additional funding for the area outside our normal program amounts. Go to the next slide there. It wasn't a great year. There was only about 65 million additional dollars that came into the UTP outside the normal programmed amount. And there's a part of me, I don't want you to think that I'm getting soft. I know Tommy over there is always talking about going harder, faster, more, but there's probably only so much that the department at this point can let out here reasonably without incurring additional costs to themselves or driving up the cost on these projects. So this was kind of a down year, but we did use that as an opportunity to achieve a lot of additional public comments. We submitted 875 public comments that we received out here from Midland and Odessa and some of the surrounding areas, talking about the need for additional funding. And you can see that was their number one response that TxDOT received there, that they talked about in this UTP process. And a couple reasons for that. One thing that had happened this year, there was a lot of criticism to commission members about how much money had been spent here in the Permian Basin. And admittedly, there are a lot of needs all over the state, too bad for them, but there are, and they're going to be vocal about that. So we need to be equally vocal about how important this is. And I think that was really encapsulated if you looked at the comments that they received in the UTP process. Help reinforce that with those commission members as we move into next year, because next year we'll have a lot of things. Part of this MTP provision or revision that's going on now is the addition of a lot of additional projects out here planned and developed. And so as those plans advance and they have some progress and they get to 35, 40%, those become projects that can funnel into that next UTP. So again, having those additional projects is important. The next slide just kind of go through the comments that we received, and you'll see they kind of cover a wide swath of the area. Now, admittedly, not all of these people are in Midland and Odessa, but what I would tell you is sort of interesting. How many people from Midland and Odessa are choosing regional corridors as areas of priority? And I think one thing that's really important for us to remember, There are a lot of people who live in Midland and Odessa, but they are working throughout the region each and every day. And we see that with submissions like 302, 285, 158, 349, some of those things. I will say one good thing for Midland. Your commute time has remained largely unchanged in the last couple of years. That being said, in Ector County, it's gone up by over 10 minutes. And that's something that we try to look at and take into account these things. Sarah knows how difficult this is from a workforce perspective, finding people and getting working here. If you start cutting in 10 minutes into their commute time each and every day, however many days of the year that is, that's a huge time period that gets sucked up there. So that's something we want to keep away from. We'll move on to our next slide. Probably the single most significant thing that we've been able to achieve over the years, and I want to point this out here with our partnership with you. You know, a lot of the things we talk about, or you know, whether it's earmark grant or what have you, a single one-time funding adjustment. But back whenever we had the additional severance taxes to the state highway fund, the state comptroller has to estimate a 2-year period for severance taxes, which is really difficult to do. And so they tend to be fairly conservative. So as you look at that spillover of severance tax money back into the state highway fund, it's always going to be a fairly conservative number. And at that time, working with Tyler Lewis, one of the things that we were able to achieve is if that amount is over what's projected in the BRE by the comptroller, that a portion of that money flows back to those areas where those severance taxes are generated. We did that through category 11, which is district discretionary funds. We created a subcategory, which is category 11E. And just looking at that 10-year period in this current UTP, that number is $772.6 million that comes back to the Odessa district. Single greatest influx of funding. And this is a repetitive formula that continues time over time going forward, unless somebody changes that formula, and hopefully they will never notice that. So this is very, very important to us. But it also comes back to the point where we talk about additional projects in the MTP. I can tell you a few years ago, this number actually should be, based on the formula that's there, about $1.3 billion. And that number has revised down. The reason it's revised down is because we added a caveat. If projects can't be undertaken here, that money can be used in other districts, energy sector districts, for their projects. And part of the reason we see that lesser number is because we don't have enough projects to move forward to take advantage of that funding. And so it's going to those other districts. That's why it is so vitally important that we have those other projects be planned and developed. Take advantage of that funding. Because you can tell here, that's nearly cutting that number in half. And that's part of the reason that we're so confident on 158 and 349 moving those forward, because we think that funding can help fill that gap. Next slide goes back to, we just held our legislative briefing for staffers. This is something we do every 2 years, kind of talk about the Permian Basin and things that are going on out here, particularly as we look forward to what we hope to accomplish at that session. Had a great program. Danny Rice, with Net Power, was there, and that was very helpful. This year, a lot of our attendees were not our normal, we call Permian Basin fans, climate caucus, things like that. Dr. Craven always does a really great job about this, but people in Austin was fascinated by zero emission power plant. Loved it. Now we love it because we need more electricity out here to lower our costs. So that's a great thing for us. It uses gas out here. It's now going to put that CO2 directly into those fields, which is enhanced recovery, another great thing. There's a lot of good that comes by this, but the interesting thing was how innovative a lot of those people thought that was, and what a positive view of the Permian Basin this is. So I always know out here it's a little bit crazy when we start talking about alternative energy, those sorts of things, these types of technology, but I think it really was helpful overall. You can see there, one of our pictures is one of the TCEQ commissioners that was there for that. He also met with Net Power, kind of talking about their permitting process going forward. But he was also really glad about it because it's another bullet in their arsenal. I shouldn't say bullet, it's bad. metaphor there, but going forward, as we talk about air attainment, air quality issues and potential non-attainment designations, that's deadly to us. The mayor had that meeting earlier this year, and one of the things that we provided her was essentially any construction project you got out here, whether it's a road or anything else, the cost is gonna be about 40% higher if that happens. So again, these are good things to kind of have out there. And oddly enough, I think part of the reason you're seeing the impetus on that power plant move forward so fast, and then talk about additional plants out here. Originally, it was going to be a visitor center, we were going to sell the technology. It's because at this point, because of the zero emissions and because of the tax credits associated with that, it is a negative impact to air quality. And as such, it essentially exempts out from those non-attainment areas. So I think you'll see a lot more of this. We'll move on. The kind of the highlight of that is economic impact for the state, and I wanted to share that with you. But on the next slide, there's one in particular, and that's our severance taxes going into the state highway fund. It's all right. Essentially, over the last 5 years, severance taxes have provided $11 billion towards state highway funds. And again, when we start hearing about all the other problems that people in Dallas and Fort Worth talk about, well, you're sending too much money to the Permian Basin. This is something I want you all to be aware of. It's something we talk about a lot. We may be spending a lot of money out here, but there is a lot more money coming from here funding the state's highway budget. And just as a note to you, in the past, the single greatest source of funding to the state highway fund was always federal funds. It's those federal tax dollars that come back. At this point, our severance tax dollars are right on par with that. Hasn't quite eclipsed it, but right on par with it. So again, the Permian Basin is essentially funding all our state roadways. Next slide. Part of the reason that we do this program and talk about a lot of these things is kind of moving forward, going into that session. There's two real hot topic items that we'll have. One is additional funding for trooper staffing here in the Permian Basin region. You see here, this is kind of February to December of last year, and then January to July of this year on enforcement actions. A couple years back, we went to DPS and asked for them to kind of step up their enforcement actions out here on CMB. And so they bring troopers in from around the state about once a month out here to go in and do sting operations. And essentially, if you look overall at those sting operations, it's about 60 to 65% of those vehicles are taken out of service, either because of the actual vehicle itself or because the driver's not licensed to drive a commercial motor vehicle. Overall, if you look at that grand scheme of things with the normal operations, it's about 55, 56%. Regardless, my point to you is we have tremendous safety issues out there. You have a lot of trucks and a lot of people driving them. Probably shouldn't be driving. Well, legally shouldn't be driving. The real challenge that we have today is DPS in our area is staffed at about 24 to 25% of their scheduled FTEs. In the past, when you went to the Trooper Academy and you graduated, you got a little card, said, here are the 3 places that I would like to go. And they would look at that and they would send you where they needed you. Maybe you got lucky and you got where you wanted to go. The last 2 Trooper Academies that have come out, they don't hand that card out anymore. People go where they ask to go because they're afraid they will literally quit the day after the academy and go do something else if they don't. That's how problematic this is. And it's not just the Permian Basin, throughout the state. Currently today, to come to the Permian Basin, a trooper is given a $400 a month stipend. And there was some talk about moving that up to $1,000. They didn't do that. But one of the things that we'll be pushing for, both the BPS administratively, they can do it in-house. But secondarily, if they don't, looking at that as a legislative process, is upping that stipend to $1,000. I think we'll have to do that in order to have BPS enforcement out here. And that's particularly important. I know the city experiences the same issue, the county experiences the same issue. So every little bit we can do, whether that law enforcement is with this group or the other group or what have you, is vitally important to this. So again, that's something that we'll be working on as we move into the session. We'll go to the next slide. The other program that we worked on a lot was the County Road Grant Program. The last time that was funded was 2020. It expires in July of 2025. That program provided additional $250 million to counties and energy impacted areas. Of that $250 million, $150 million of it came here to the Central Permian Basin. It was a significant influx of funds, and the great thing about those funds, they can use it to rehab roads, they can use it to build new roads, Yukon, South Blue, or examples of this. They partner with cities on roads. The state can't actually give money to a city for a roadway project, but they can to the county. So this opens up a lot of opportunities. We did try to fund that project last session, try to provide some additional funding to it, and we're unsuccessful in that. Part of the reason why it was still $75 million of the $150 million out here unspent, 4.5 years into the program. So we've worked on that. I think we're in a better place now. Those funds have gotten used up, and so we're going to try to do this again. But again, it's an enormous influx of funds. And one of the things that is kind of good as we talk about this, I talked earlier about how you have a big influx of funds like right now today. Your ability to let that without essentially driving up costs on yourself is kind of difficult. There's X number of contractors out here to do that business. But over the last about year and a half, we've seen 2 additional firms come in out here. And so hopefully, as we have this sustained funding, whether it's coming from 11E, whether it's coming from a county road grant program, that helps us if we move and get those operations set up here so we can do more on a long-term basis. That's good for everybody. The final slide I will share with you, one of the things that we do to impact those decision makers in Austin, Washington, as well as some other retail development, things of that nature, is we talk a lot about the things that are happening out here. A lot of the really impressive numbers on social media. This year we had about 5.5 million views, a little over 1 million people. And it's not targeted here. It's targeted elsewhere. But from that, we'll get questions back and people wanting additional information or what have you. Oddly enough, this year, the single greatest request we had was for information on all the direct flights. Or they weren't really specifying as direct flights, but flights out of Midland and Odessa, flight availability from here to other places. And I thought that was sort of interesting. So we put a lot of that data together. And admittedly, those Austin flights with Delta helped a lot, but that was kind of an interesting thing that we got so many questions about that. But I think again, it goes back to something all of us in this room know. I talk about roads a lot. Pipelines are important, transmission lines are important. This airport is also very, very important to our community. So that was sort of a highlight that I did want to share with you. That being said, I will shut up, and if you have any questions, be glad to answer them, but otherwise I will take up any more of your time.
Thank you, James. Are there any public comment? Any questions from the board? Houston, thank you.
We appreciate you.
Item number 4, resolution authorizing the execution of an economic development agreement with Botran Alliance, Inc. and authorizing payment thereof. This resolution commits $142,500 to Motran for fiscal year 2025 to secure additional infrastructure funding for the area and aggressively pursue the development and improvement of transportation corridors connecting Midland with the domestic and international markets. The 2025 amount is the same as the 2024 request. NBC has been supporting Motran financially since 2010. Is there any public comment? Any discussion from the board? Making a motion for approval. Have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Motion second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Number 5. Resolution authorizing the execution of a promotional agreement with Midland Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Inc. to advertise or publicize the city of Midland for the purpose of developing a new and expanded business enterprises. The Midland Hispanic Chamber of Commerce will utilize the funds provided for under the terms of the agreement for a micro grant program, providing $1,000 each month who is different Midland entrepreneurs to grow and improve their business. The agreement is for 1 year and $12,000 total from the MVC. Any public comment?
I would just like to say thank you. I'm Savannah Morales. I'm with the Midland Sonic Chamber, and I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to help with investing in our local businesses here. And economic growth is very important to keep our community going. So I just want to thank you guys for agreeing to do that.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions from the board? Time on. Entertain a motion for approval. I'll make the motion to approve. Second.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, County.
So, thank you.
Item number 6, resolution authorizing the execution of the feasibility and access agreement with Space Nation Inc. regarding certain facilities located at 2908 Enterprise Lane in Midland. It provides for Space Nation to utilize a portion of the MVC owned facilities at 2908 Enterprise Lane for their space simulation missions in Midland. The term of the agreement ends December 31st, 2024, this year. Any comments? Any public? Any discussion from the board? I'll call for a motion for approval.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion, we have a second. I'll second. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Resolution approving the execution of amendment to that certain lease agreement with Custodian Corporation for certain real property described as approximately 125 acre tract of land out of section 33, block 40, Township 1 South, T&P Railroad Company Survey, Midland County, Texas. This amends the original lease agreement by placing the exhibit showing the leased area. The leased area site remains the same, size remains the same, but it's been moved slightly to the south to accommodate custodians' activities. We have a comment, Sean? You want to
No,
think at this time?
no, that's correct.
He doesn't have his hand up, right?
He's available.
Now he does. Now he does.
Yeah, this is just a real simple change to the specific location of the 125 acre circle slightly to the south, just to improve site safety. So happy to answer any questions.
That all the facilities and stuff are staying the same, we're just changing the location, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any further public comment? Any further discussion from the board? Okay, I'll call for a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Seconds. Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Resolution authorizing the execution of consultant service agreement with the Perryman Group in the amount not to exceed $80,000 for the production of certain economic indices and reports regarding the city of Midland, Texas, and the Permian Basin. Continues the agreement initiated in 2020 with the Perryman Group to provide economic indices and reports. These reports are among the most requested data from the MDC. The amount is the same as the 2023-24 agreement. Do we have any public comment? Ms. Hyde? Any discussion from the board?
I'm probably should have spoken up in the public comment question, but I just wanted to say that I'm asked a lot of these same questions and I use a lot of this data in a lot of my dialogue around the community. So it's compelling information. The previous was compelling and I expect that this will be compelling as well. And we need this to be able to continue a lot of the conversations that we're having. So I think this is important for us to do.
Okay, thank you. Call for a motion for approval. Make a motion. Is there a second? Motion second, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, at this time we'll have a presentation of the September 2024 monthly expense and economic development activity report from the Midland Development Corporation, Executive Director and staff. All yours, Sarah.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. Gabby, if you could move to the slide for sales tax. So September 30th was the end of MDC's 2024 fiscal year. So MDC finished the fiscal year a little under 2% under the previous fiscal year in terms of sales tax receipts. So just a little under 17 million. On the financial statements included in your board packet, you will see 462,000 under the line for consulting. That's 53450 consulting fees. Included in that amount is the last payment to Interflight Global for their consulting services agreement, as well as the payment to MITRE for the work that they're doing for the MDC is approved by the board and city council. I don't have any other comments on the financial statements, but I'm happy to answer questions if anyone has those. In terms of economic development activity, I believe all of you have an invitation in your inbox to the naming of the physician assistance program at Midland College, Texas Tech Health Sciences Center. It will be named in honor of former Speaker Craddock and Nadine Craddock, and that will be on October 15th. Again, all the board members should have an invitation to that. It's at 3 p.m. out at the facility at Midland College campus. MDC substantially supported the expansion of that program, so I think you would all be welcome to join, and please join if you're interested in doing so. Aside from that, I will hand it off to Gabby for the marketing report.
Good morning. I got to go out to that facility last year with Leadership Midland, and it is super cool. As a Texas Tech alumni, it kind of feels like Lubbock a little bit, so it's cool to see those touches here in Midland. Over on social media, Facebook, our Facebook following has grown quite a bit over the last few months, sitting at 4,000 followers. The top post this month included the Omni update, a post that we did about our small business help, and then the Starfighters announcement. The reel that I posted, I think back in July, called How Lucky Are We? It's now sitting at 45,000 views. If you want some entertainment, go read the comment section, or don't, because then you'll feel a little depressed. But it's just cool to see how Facebook, we previously really haven't had good traction over there. Another example is the Fly into Fall recap that only has 400 views. So man, that algorithm is just tricky. On LinkedIn, we're sitting at 2,372 followers. The Omni update did really well, getting a lot of traction with our local business community, as well as the Starfighters announcement and our other post of small business help. Instagram sitting at 3,626 followers. Our top post actually included the website announcement, the website redesign announcement that I showed y'all last month, with our small business resource post and the Omni update. The Fly into Fall reel over there did better. Just a little look at what we did. The graphic in the middle was something we've kind of been doing throughout the summer, those frequently asked questions that we tend to have. So just getting that education out, and that was shared quite a bit. So it's good to have that just cycling through people's feeds. Other activities, our newsletter was sent out on the 1st. The highest clicked link was our Costco reel, actually. And then some media attention that we had, the Starfighters Space Expands to Midland from First Alert 7 was shared. So thank you to them. And then with the spaceport, the website update, they're working on a graphic that's going to be kind of on the homepage of the microsite. So they're working on getting that back to us. And then just some further development of just as needed feedback from people as they're using the website. Social media, Instagram actually surpassed 100 followers, so yay, since I made this
Facebook's sitting at 140 followers, and LinkedIn continues to grow at 213 followers. Some other things that are happening with the spaceport, we're working on preparations for the HSAT workshop in November. Helping out, getting the word out. Starfighters, that came up in a conversation this weekend I had at a brunch. They asked me about starfighters, so it's good to have people to learn about things that are happening at the spaceport. AST just had a successful launch, so that's something else that we're able to tell people about. And then just some updated marketing materials on the Midland Altitude Chamber Complex.
Does AST do any of their own social media and I'm just not following it, or that's just really not their?
They have an official page. I
They
think
do?
it's AST Space Mobile.
Okay.
They also have an extremely active Reddit. Yes.
Okay.
And like a fan base on Instagram, a couple of them have messaged us, just thumbs up kind of thing, so they're active. And then Founders Blend, we had our meeting last week at the Seed. We're wrapping up over there. We heard from Backstage Event Marketing and Dahlia Companies / The Preserve. So it was good to hear from 2 different businesses of different sizes and also learn more about the development happening in West Midland. Big thanks to the Suds and Commodore Midstream Partners for providing breakfast and coffee. We'll be back at Midland College in the Karaska room on November 6th. We're working on getting those presenters dialed down, but we'll be there in the morning if you'd like to join us.
Awesome, thanks Gabby, and kudos to Gabby. Marketing is such a huge part of how you explain and educate people about what MDC does, and so we're lucky to have Gabby to do with it. And more often than not, when I'm meeting with businesses, they ask, who does your marketing? I like how it looks and things like that. So that's all Gabby. Well, this month I met with 8 different businesses, and here's a breakdown of those businesses. Oil and gas, service companies, restaurants, retail, media, and marketing. And the big factors that are impacting businesses, they break down as follows. Capital was a really big issue. I'm hearing a lot more about it is just expensive to operate a business, from employees, from supplies, from inflation, from real estate. I also heard about labor that is just hard to recruit and retain people, something that we've heard time and time again. And then because Midland has a lot of demand for these businesses, I hear more often than not that businesses have grown really, really rapidly, and they are figuring out how to operate a large business when they are relatively new into being an entrepreneur. So I hear a lot about management pains and business growing pains. And then some of the big takeaways from this past month, as far as workforce trends, as the saying goes, it costs more to hire the wrong employees than it does to wait and hire the right one. Multiple business owners, they mentioned how they are now the people that are doing the employee interviews. It's not the managers or lead staff. It's just easier to understand those potential new employees, if they're gonna do the job well, if they're gonna fit the company culture, if they're going to need additional training. And the owners are just able to get a better gauge as to if they're gonna be a good fit. And then also it's a good way for them to keep in mind, what are competitive wage rates? What are other companies doing? How can I recruit? It just kind of keeps their ear to the ground, so to speak, as far as what are some trends. And then one entrepreneur I thought said it best this month: when you think of your employees as replaceable, they will leave. I'll say that one more time. When you think of your employees as replaceable, they will leave. Again, it is expensive to run a company, and so your biggest investment is going to be in those employees. And then I also heard something that caught my attention. It seems like it's becoming more and more competitive to find jobs for employees. That's something that we're just starting to see, whereas before it seemed like it was easier for employees to find jobs and employers were having to compete with one another. Now it's kind of shifting gears a little bit, especially for oil and gas service companies. And then perception is everything. Midland is changing and so is its perception. This month, a business owner told me, and I thought this caught my attention for sure, that the Gen X generation from Midland often apologizes for Midland, but now the new generation, millennials and Gen Z, they are big about celebrating Midland. And we are no longer a small town, but a bustling petroplex. I'm really gonna try to make that stick. We are a petroplex. And the growing pains we have here are to be expected when you are a growing urban area. I also heard that the 191 corridor looks cleaner thanks to recent community initiatives. I've mentioned before, the trash being an impression when people come from the airport. And I've heard that 191 is looking better. So kudos to that. Let's keep that up. And then some new business feedback that I've heard that it's a lot easier now to start a business and get what you need with the city as far as zoning and permits. So this is a very positive improvement from 2022. And then something else I continue to hear about is how expensive leasing and owning a building space can be within city limits. So this is a good opportunity to add to the market since we've touched on how high occupancy rates are. And then as a reminder, just starting a business, it requires a lot of capital upfront. Any questions? On any of that? And then to reiterate, like Gabby said, we have a Founders Plan meeting in November. Like we've done in the past, we have moved from the seed, that's where we spent the summer. And now we'll head to Midland College just as a means to reach all different parts of the community.
Good. Thank you. I want to point out that AST reached an $8 billion market cap. Pretty little significant little company out there at the airport. Okay, it's I have about 10:53. At this time we'll retire into executive session. Pursuant to Texas Government Code 55-1.101, the Board of Directors will hold an executive session which is closed to the public